What's going on, good people? Welcome into episode 9 of Real Spill, where the truth wins. You already know the deal by now. It's your boy Scott Procter, joined as always by Ellis L. Williams, who covers the Carolina Panthers for the Charlotte Observer. We got a special one for you today, so make sure you drop a like, comment, and subscribe to catch us talking NFL and the Panthers every single Friday. But let's hop right into it, L. How we always do it, man, with bump and run. Let's start here. The Commanders and the Giants, man, they played to a tie on Sunday, with both teams sitting now at 7 wins, Will, and still very much in the NFC playoff picture. Which of these two teams, if either, you think makes the playoffs in the NFC?
Yeah, I think the tie was really fitting, right? Like, there's of course a world where they both make it, but then when you look at that playoff picture, do you really give either team a real shot in the first round? And then there's a scenario where really the Seahawks keep winning, where only one of those teams make it. And really the point I'm trying to get to, and I'm really going to say a similar thing about the AFC playoff picture when we get there as well. The tie is fitting because the bottom of the NFC just doesn't really have a chance. And we saw this last year with the Eagles. You know, they fight their way into the playoffs, and then that playoff game against Tampa Bay, quite frankly, was non-competitive. So they're good stories in the NFC East, and there's some fascinating offseason storylines that are going to happen with those two teams, being the Giants and Washington. But where we are at in the calendar, I'm not sure it really makes all the difference. You know what I'm saying?
No doubt about it. It really doesn't make a whole lot of difference. If one of these teams were to make the playoffs, they're definitely a first-round exit. But the Commanders are at least a little bit of fun at this point. We were talking to Mark Schlereth last week, and he was talking about how this Washington team has chosen Taylor Heineke as its quarterback. And we saw a little bit of it on Sunday, where they kind of looked dead in the water late in that game, and he makes a play, extending the play. Jahan Dotson, the talented rookie, makes a hell of a play to tie that game late. So they're at least exciting. I'll probably expect at this point for Washington to sneak in the NFC playoffs in that last spot, but they won't be doing too much after that. But let's slide over to the AFC, man. In a rematch of last season's AFC Championship game, the Bengals beat the Chiefs for the third straight time on Sunday, man. Are the Bengals the biggest threat to the Chiefs in the AFC? I know we talked a couple weeks ago, you were on the Ravens, but obviously with Lamar and another injury, that might have changed. Talk to me about that.
Yeah, no, you're right about the Ravens. I think it's time to move on a bit from them. And then you look at a team like the Tennessee Titans, which we're going to get to a little bit later, everything going on in their front office, kind of tells you where this AFC is at. It's 3 teams, right? It's the Chiefs, the Bills, and the Bengals. And what's so fascinating about this playoff picture is it's really going to come down to where the Bengals end up in the seeding, meaning I'd rather have the 1 or the 2 seed if it means avoiding Cincinnati than it does necessarily not playing a first round game, right? Because two of these 3 teams are going to cannibalize the other, and then the other avoids that matchup. So if I'm Kansas City, I do whatever it takes to avoid the Bengals until as long as possible. But it might be out of their control because it's just been such a strange year for the Bengals, who are now, won 8 straight?
Something like that, man. I mean, it was a tough start to the season for them, which is expected with, Joe Burrow having that appendectomy, in the offseason pretty close to the start of the season. But this Bengals team is scary, man. And they're just not all about offense either, man. This defense gets it done, in the run game, in the pass game, holding Patrick Mahomes to what he had, 21 points or so in that offense, taking a big turnover away from Travis Kelce late in that game. So this team is real, man. If it's not the Chiefs, I expect the Bengals to be in the Super Bowl representing the AFC. I mean, I know people are still on the Buffalo Bills, but I like the Chiefs and Bengals head and shoulders ahead of the Buffalo Bills based on what we've seen over the last month or so. Sure. Let's move on to our last one here for bump and run. Monday Night Football, man. We got vintage Tom Brady. We tried to tell people, man. We said he was back up from that divorce. But we got vintage Brady, man. He led a game-winning touchdown drive to beat the hapless New Orleans Saints on Monday Night Football, man. You think Tampa locked up the division with that win, the NFC South? You think they locked it up?
They all about have, right? But it's really going to come down to a few things. First of all, can Tampa really get 1 or 2 more before that Week 17 game against Carolina, which is in Tampa Bay on New Year's Day? Yeah. And then is Carolina going to be able to take care of business, potentially upset a team like Seattle, Detroit, who's now on a run? I mean, Detroit's favored against the Minnesota Vikings,
which is crazy. 2.5 point favorites.
Right. And then Pittsburgh's frisky, right? So really this is going to come down to what Carolina actually is, which we'll figure that a lot out on Sunday. Yeah. And then Tampa will probably by default win this division, right? But brother, watching that game, it was sloppy. It was awful. I mean the Saints left probably 10 points on the board just on a few red zone drops.
Exactly.
Right. And there was a stat that kept running all Monday night where like the Buccaneers are the worst team in football when it's 3rd and 10 or longer.
Yes.
I mean, with Tom Brady and
may as well punt it if they get in that situation right on 3rd down. Yeah.
Right. So it really this says everything about the NFC South, and it really does the Tampa Bay Buccaneers.
Absolutely. I mean, the Panthers, if you're the Panthers, you got to be excited watching that game on Monday Night Football, knowing that, you still realistically, have a chance. But I think obviously everybody probably expects Tom Brady and the Bucs to come out on top in this division, even if it is by default. That defense is just good enough to give Tom Brady and that offense a chance at the end of games. And that's all the GOAT needs. But we're going to move on, man. We're going to move on to the big spill, man. We got a really cool interview with ESPN NFL insider Field Yates. We'll get to that right now. Welcome into the Big Spill. We got a special guest joining us today, ESPN NFL insider and co-host of the Fantasy Focus Football Podcast. It's Field Yates. Field, thanks so much for joining us, my man. How are we doing?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me on. I love talking football, and maybe if we get lucky, a little bit of lacrosse as well.
Sounds good, man. Let's hop right into it, man. So obviously the news on Tuesday, some big news. Tennessee Titans fired their GM Jon Robinson. How surprising was that to you, Field? And what do you kind of make of that move?
Yeah, I would say that it was shocking more so than surprising, just to sort of grade it on the scale of out of nowhereness. We have seen teams make interesting decisions with prominent decision makers, whether it's head coaches or general managers. And we've seen teams who were not necessarily at the top of the food chain, but at least in the playoff hunt, move on from coaches. I mean, even the Raiders this past year, although it was an interim head coach, their interim head coach, Rich Bisaccia, was not retained and they moved to Josh McDaniels instead. That's just one example, but it's rare that you see a team make this kind of decision on Tuesday of week 14. That was the part that, as I have done some reporting on it and speaking to people around the NFL, continues to be the most mystifying. It just feels like is unusual of a time to fire a general manager, especially one who is the GM of a team that's going to win its division, has had moments this year when it's played extremely resilient, tough football against top competition. Something doesn't quite add up there.
Field, football is a complex game. Sometimes we tend to overcomplicate it. Yeah. Is this almost as simple as A.J. Brown comes and faces his former team and mosses the Tennessee Titans secondary, and then the Tuesday after this decision happens?
I'd be surprised if that was it. Now, it would make for an incredibly convenient narrative if such were the case. It just feels to me like way too convenient. And while A.J. Brown did have a great game against the Titans on Sunday, he's had a lot of great games so far this season. So there have been other examples in which Titans fans have been disappointed by the fact that he is no longer on their team. I have sort of landed on this, that as of right now, I'm going to take the reporting at its word, which a lot of the reporting seems to be that the team just felt like it had a good roster, not a great roster. And in order to be a true blue chip contender, you have to have a great roster, and they were looking for more. I will accept that for now. But they also extended Jon Robinson for 4 years, like 7-8 months ago. Yeah. So again, there's something it feels like there is another shoe to drop. I have no idea what that shoe is, but it's extremely confusing to me.
No doubt about it. And maybe his relationship with Mike Vrabel maybe could have played a role in it. And I've seen people speculate on that. And I've seen a recent clip of the draft recently when A.J. Brown was traded on draft day and Mike Vrabel kind of had a look on his face where he wasn't too happy about that. Maybe that could have played a role in it as well. And also, too, you mentioned not the lack of talent on the roster. I mean, I've heard you talk about this from the fantasy football perspective. The pass catchers on the Tennessee Titans roster, aside from Traylon Butcher they just drafted, there's just not much there. And obviously that's the direct, reflection of Jon Robinson, the job he's done as GM, I would say.
Yeah, smoke and mirrors is probably a little bit too strong of a categorization for how they've gotten by this year. Yeah. But almost every week there's a player who catches a pass And I'm like,
who is that?
Who is number 19 for the Titans? Like, where did he come from, right? Is he a practice squad elevation? Yeah. Is he somebody that's been there for 10 years and somehow slid through the cracks? It has been a very unique roster this season. And over the past 2 years, they played so many bodies. Now, a lot of this is because of the COVID impacted seasons, but there was a time, I think it was 2 years ago, where they set the record, which might have been broken by the Cardinals a year later, for most players to appear on the 53-man roster for at least one regular season game. So Tennessee has been sort of a revolving door of names, some of which we know, like Derrick Henry and Ryan Tannehill, some of which we don't know, which has made them an interesting team to follow over the past few seasons, and they've just kept winning.
No doubt about it. I want to lean a little bit on your past experience with the New England Patriots here to talk about that. We'll be talking about the New England Patriots and their Monday Night Football matchup with the Arizona Cardinals on Monday's show. And obviously the last time the Patriots were on the field was a Thursday night loss to the Buffalo Bills, where late in that game, Mac Jones was seen kind of screaming, pretty upset on the sideline about maybe some play calling and whatnot. What do you kind of make of that kind of dust up in the Patriots offense as a whole, with questions marks surrounding offensive coordinator and really who's running the show offensively for them?
You know, Ellis was just talking about how, like, sometimes things can be simple. And while there are a lot of very complicated tentacles to coaching in all sports, I have always believed that, like, the fundamental job of a coach is to get the best out of whatever players he has and what they do best. And right now, when you watch Matt Patricia, the Patriots' de facto offensive coordinator, it doesn't strike me that he is getting the best out of what Mac Jones does well. We have a few aliens in the NFL at the quarterback spot that could succeed anywhere. Patrick Mahomes, Josh Allen, players of that caliber, right? Those are always the first two that come to mind. There are a lot of other quarterbacks who are imperfect, but with the right ingredients around them can be extremely successful as players. I think about what the Dolphins have done this year with Tua Tagovailoa, and I don't really know or care exactly where Tua ranks in terms of best quarterbacks in the NFL. I just know that they're doing an incredible job this season with everything they're doing on offense. I believe that Matt, and he's sort of above that line. There are quarterbacks that are below that line where it's like, you just need to move on. Unfortunately for Ellis, he covers a team that maybe has had too many of those of late, right? But there are players that are above the line. And I believe Mac Jones is above that line. We saw it last year. Again, he wasn't 4,500 passing yards, 40 touchdowns, and 10 picks good, but Patriots went 10-7. They had a 7-game winning streak last year. Mac Jones was playing terrific football for a while there, and they got to get back to that. And I don't know that it'll happen in this season, especially with just 5 games left. But if I'm the Patriots this offseason, my mindset is every decision that we make has to be dedicated towards empowering Mac Jones. And if that means a coordinator change, if that means making a big investment in a wide receiver, if that means using all your picks on the offense, doesn't matter. It's worth it, because they have shown over the years they can do an excellent job of being resourceful on defense. They constantly have good defense under Bill Belichick. It's like death taxes in the top 10 Patriots defense. Yep. On offense, though, it hasn't been the same this year, and it's holding them back. They're still 6-6 in the playoff mix, but if they want to be a legit contender in the AFC, they got to enhance Mac Jones.
Field, I'm going to throw another juicy storyline at you here. First, I heard it floated around by, a prominent Boston sports personality, if you will. Do you give any merit to the possibility of Tom Brady returning to New England?
I don't think so. And I'm not saying it can't happen. It would strike me that the only way that would happen, and I have no information on this, so this is just trying to put together things logically, is if Robert Kraft, the owner of the Patriots, and Tom Brady, who have a very, very, very special bond, have for 23 years, I guess it is now, however long it's been since they drafted him, 22 and a half years. If Robert Kraft and Tom Brady have been having back-channel conversations, and well, I guess that would lead to a fine, a suspension, and a loss of a first-round pick. But if they were to hypothetically at a later date have those conversations, and they just said, something, we're not comfortable with how this story ended. We want your final chapter as an NFL player to be with us. That would be the only way that I could see that happening. But one thing that's been consistent during the tenure of Robert Kraft, and I think this is actually a great trait for an owner, is the coach is coach. Yeah. I pay the bills. The coach is coach. The GM scout. The players play, and he has been very much not a meddling owner. I get it. Brady would be a totally unique circumstance, but that would be the only way where I could see it happening. And like, if I were to assign a percentage, 0.0001, because I don't think it's reality. I think it's possible. I don't want to dismiss the possibility because this is the world of the NFL, but I think they are truly committed to Mac Jones and building a really good team around him, because as I just said, with the right ingredients around him, he can be a winning quarterback.
Yeah, we agree. I think we agree there, Phil. Probably last question we got for you before we let you get up out of here.
Okay.
We'll stay here in New England. I see you rocking the PLL sweatshirt, and I know you were a dual sport athlete in college, playing both football and lacrosse. I know you're still a big fan. I also know Bill Belichick might be a fan of lacrosse, something people may not know. And I think I seen a few years ago you said something to the effect of, as great as Bill Belichick is as a football mind, you would love to see him coach lacrosse one day. Talk to us about that and your guys' kind of shared love for the sport of lacrosse.
Well, lacrosse is very different from football in a lot of ways, but probably one way that stands out more than ever. Football practice as a player is so bad. It's so boring, especially when you live in New England or if you're from Minnesota. Pads, full padded practices during the winter, when you're outdoors, like I went to high school and college. We did not have indoor facilities where when it got down to about 15 degrees, you could just go inside, crank the heat a little bit, have it feel almost like, maybe like sort of like autumn. No, we had to go out and hit, and getting hit. I'm 5'10". I was never the biggest guy on my team. Getting knocked around by fullbacks and linebackers and everything in between was never fun when it was about 20 degrees out. But Belichick as a tactician would be really interesting as a lacrosse coach. And lacrosse is one of those sports where it actually is fun to practice. A lot of it is like 2-on-1, 3-on-2s, you name it, just like sort of more free flowing. So he would be interesting because lacrosse definitely is a very tactical sport. I don't know that the public knows nearly as much about the X's and O's of lacrosse as we do football, because football is such a popular sport here. But I can only imagine that if Belichick can consistently get as much out of his football teams as he does, what it will be like with the lacrosse team. Like, would he be a defensive guru? Maybe he'd surprise us and be a juggernaut offensive coach. So it would be fun to watch. My guess is that he's pretty happy with his regular job, though.
You would think so.
Something tells me perhaps the marriage between Cam Newton and Bill Belichick would have worked out on the lacrosse field. But
you know what? I got to tell you. Now, they went 7-9. It wasn't perfect, but that became like a bromance by the end of it.
Yeah,
did. Didn't expect that.
Cam carried the torch for the Patriots organization at an absolutely incredible level. I have a ton. I've always respected him as a player. I don't know him personally, but watching the way that it ended in Carolina, the way that it went to New England, and the return to Carolina, I've always had a lot of respect for how he carries himself as the centerpiece of a football organization.
No doubt about it. That's awesome stuff, Field. Thanks so much for joining us, my man. Go check out Field's great work, obviously on Twitter, on ESPN. But that's going to do it for us. Thanks so much, Field. You're the man.
All right, guys. Take care. Good talking to you.
Appreciate you. Likewise. Moving on the PROWL, we're talking Carolina Panthers, man. It's been a crazy week down there in Charlotte, man, with the Panthers. Obviously, Baker Mayfield was released by the Panthers on Monday, man. Man, talk us through this. Why did this move make sense for both sides?
Right. So it's really as simple as this. Panthers interim head coach Steve Wilks met with the quarterbacks on Monday. That being Sam Darnold, PJ Walker, Baker Mayfield. And believe it or not, for the first time all year, all three were healthy. All three were not dealing with a high ankle sprain, essentially. So they all three of them dealt with that at a different time this year, which meant Steve Wilks had a decision on his hands, and he had to set his depth chart. He had already named Sam Darnold the starter prior to the bye week. He named Sam the starter after the Denver win a week and a half ago, which meant the backup role was up for grabs. And Steve Wilks decided to name PJ Walker the backup, which relegated Baker Mayfield to the number 3 quarterback. At that point, Baker marinated in it for a little bit, and then shortly after went up to general manager Scott Fitterer's office. The two had a brief conversation in which Baker Mayfield decided and asked for his release, thinking it's what was best for him and his camp, his future in this league. Yeah. The Panthers quickly honored that request, and Baker Mayfield was released on Monday, then picked up on Tuesday by the Los Angeles Rams, which essentially makes sense for all parties, right? Baker Mayfield clearly had no future in Carolina. He's a free agent in March, and to figure out what is best for his career going forward. He needed an opportunity to get on the field. It looks like he's going to have that chance in Los Angeles.
No doubt. I mean, I'm happy for him given the circumstances that he's at least, out in a situation where he really just didn't have a future.
Yeah, real quick, I'm going to Captain Hindsight this because I know there was no way this was ever going to happen because of emotion. Mm-hmm. But if I was in Baker Mayfield's camp, you should have advised him to stay in Cleveland and just swallow the pride, put together a Jacoby Brissett-like campaign, and then go make your money this offseason. And I know I'm now giving you the test while already having the answers.
Right.
But Baker really could have came out the bigger person after all that. And, of course, that's not how it played out. And I understand why it didn't. But sometimes we're just too emotional in this industry. Sometimes we're too emotional in life, brother. Am I right?
That pride, man. That pride is a MFer, as the saying goes. But I mean, you're absolutely right, though, because look at how we're looking at Jacoby Brissett right now. I mean, especially in Cleveland. I mean, he's being celebrated for not even leading them to a 500 record throughout the first half of the season. But he played admirably, and that could have easily been Baker. But it didn't work out that way, and we'll see how it goes from there. But let's talk about the guys that are still on the Panthers roster a little bit. Tell me what you saw from Sam Darnold against Denver a couple weeks ago, almost 2 weeks ago, and why he'll be the guy to kind of lead Carolina's late season playoff push here.
Yeah, man. I mean, stop me if you heard this before, but perhaps Sam Darnold got his swagger back. I mean, look. That Denver Broncos defense. I know Denver is in football hell right now, but
the defense is for real.
Right? But they came in as a third-ranked defense in the league. Patrick Surtain is a future All-Pro, future probably number one corner overall in this league, going to take Jalen Ramsey's throne, right?
I agree.
And DJ Moore put up a buck on him. And a lot of that had to do with the way Sam Darnold was quarterbacking and patrolling the pocket. I mean, his stop, drop, and roll touchdown on the RPO fumble, went viral for obvious reasons, but really it was the way he was timely, explosive, and mistake-free. And this Panthers offensive line is without question the best offensive line Sam Darnold's ever quarterbacked behind. And when Sam can get rolling, he's got those traits. I've heard this before in the Panthers building. If you could put Baker Mayfield's brain on Sam Darnold's ability, you'd have a decent quarterback. And that's not calling Sam, unintelligent or not football smart. It just kind of always moved a little too fast for Sam. But he had not played a regular season game since last season, week 18, all this time off to now play behind a consistent offensive line. This is going to be an interesting 5-game run here for Sam Darnold, coming off what he did to the third-ranked defense in the NFL.
No, it is. It's fascinating. And I saw you mention that in your recent story talking about Sam Darnold and how, he's kind of really opening things up and he's the best option for DJ Moore. Just the fact that this is the best offensive line that Darnold has played behind. And that's probably something that people aren't thinking about. Maybe something that people don't attribute to the Carolina Panthers with how the season has gone. But we talked about this a couple weeks ago on the show. That offensive line is quietly maybe the best unit on the entire team and playing at a really high level. Obviously, mainly doing it in the run game, but they've been protecting pretty well here recently too. And if Darnold gets some protection, he can put up some points with the supporting cast. Last question before we get up out of here and move on to the next segment, my guy. What's it going to take on Sunday for the Panthers to knock off a really confident Seahawks team that's playing well on both sides of the ball right now?
Yeah, this is a Seahawks team that is in a really crossroad moment in their season.
Definitely.
First, Kenneth Walker goes down. That's just a tough injury for any team to deal with when you're looking for answers of an explosive nature to make Geno Smith's life easier, right? And then when you look at that Rams game, essentially a JV starting lineup from Los Angeles that features no Matthew Stafford, a suspect offensive line, as we've already discussed, no Cooper Kupp. Right, they're still able to put down 23, and Geno had to throw for 300. So essentially, they're going to have to find a way to get their hands on DK Metcalf, Tyler Lockett. Don't allow these chunk plays to snowball. And then I think offensively, they're going to be able to run the ball against Seattle. Most teams have. I believe Seattle's in the bottom third of the league in run defense. And then, look, it's the same script for teams like the Carolina Panthers. You need to run the football, execute on play action, and be sound in the red zone. And you're going to have to win close games. This Panthers team's not going to come in and surprise anybody. It'll be methodical. They're going to win with defense. Do I think they can do it? I'd be surprised. But look, this league the margins are so thin every week. Anything can happen. Is any given Sunday more than ever in the league right now?
No doubt about it. I'm not sure what the spread is of that game.
Yeah,
but
I'm curious.
I mean, yeah, me too. But I'm actually giving Carolina a decent chance. Obviously,
right.
you talked about it. Seattle is coming off a pretty emotional divisional win, even though, like you mentioned, the Rams weren't playing any or many of their stars. But I mean, I'm pretty sure Geno Smith had a career day on Sunday in terms of at least passing yardage. He's coming in hot. I mean, those are the kind of games, at least from a fantasy football perspective, talking about the quarterback. If you peaks and valleys, man. I don't know if Geno Smith is going to be able to put together two amazing games, which is probably what it's going to take for this offense, to get to 30 points, get to 28 points or so, and walk away with a win. So I like the Panthers on Sunday. I'm giving a puncher a chance at least to cover the spread, depending on what that's looking like. But let's move on, man. Let's move on to nickel and dime, man. Talk about who was at 10 last week and who wasn't even worth a damn nickel, man. I'll let you start, man. Who was your dime? Who was at 10 last week?
Look, brother, we got to go with Joey Cool. Joe Burrow, the Cincinnati Bengals.
Joe Shiesty.
Joe Shiesty, man. Look.
Different.
This young man is playing the position like the coldest cats before him have. You know what I'm saying? Like, there's just something about the way his energy, the things we can't measure in a box score, brother. It's exciting because I know you relate, you can feel to it, just what a quarterback does to a team, to an organization, the way their energy seeps throughout it. Like, this team has just become a bunch of mini Joe Burrows.
Yeah, I was going to say that. They take it on the personality of him. Instill confidence in the whole squad. You can see it every week, man.
It's cold. I don't know what it means for their season. Could they go to the Super Bowl again? Could they lose in the divisional round? Sure. But man, for the next, I hate when people say for the next decade, but for the next 5 years,
facts.
Joe Burrow has this AFC North in his grasp.
No doubt about it, man. He's one of my favorite players in the entire NFL, man. Certainly a top 5 quarterback. And you mentioned it, man, for the next 5. I'm going to say for the next decade, man, the Bengals are going to be in Super Bowl conversations as long as Jamar Chase and Joe Burrow and T. Higgins are all teammates, man. That's going to be one of the scariest units in the entire NFL, man. I got to go on for my dime, man. Another one of my favorite entire players in the NFL. I don't know how I haven't talked about him much on the show yet, but it's Amon-Ra St. Brown, man. Ooh. This man is one of the very best. Yeah. I think he's one of the very best young players in the entire NFL, let alone wide receivers, man. He went off again on Sunday, 11 catches, 114 yards, 2 touchdowns. He's been one of the most consistent pretty much since the second half of last season. He's been one of the most consistent playmakers in the entire NFL, man. He's just buried in Detroit, even though they are still alive in the playoff race. If he was playing in another team, on a better team, perhaps, I think we'd be talking about him as a legitimate star in this league, man. But Amon-Ra St. Brown, this man is a dog. And it's so fun to watch him play, man. Just working in that slot every week, getting open on safeties, nickels, guys, and whatnot. It's fun to watch. He's just one of my favorites. I had to give that boy a shout out. I'm going to go to my nickel, man. It's Dennis Allen. We talked a little bit about the hapless Saints on Monday Night Football, man. At this point, Dennis Allen just isn't a good NFL head coach. I mean, I think the evidence out there's enough of it. I mean, this team has lost 4 of the last 5. They have 4 wins on the season. One of those wins, they only have 1 win over a team with a winning record at this point, and that was the Seattle Seahawks that we talked about a little bit earlier. I think this is probably going to be a one-and-done type thing for him as the head coach of the New Orleans Saints. And I think about, a couple weeks ago where Jameis Winston was asked about why he's not playing, and there was some real hurt in that man's eyes. And, again, I just can't vibe with you throwing out Andy Dalton out there every single week with this offense looking inept as it is at times. And Jameis Winston, a healthy Jameis Winston, is still on the bench. So, Dennis Allen, you get my nickel for the week. Who's yours?
Dark times in New Orleans, brother. Dark times. My nickel, I'm going to, similar you, keep this on a coach and a coaching staff, really. The Indianapolis Colts and Jeff Saturday, man. The honeymoon's over. That was over. Appalling and embarrassing. And I wasn't going to do this, but I read Jason La Canfora's most recent piece on the Washington Post. And he's one of those insiders who puts little nuggets, the 1-sentence hitters in there that you really got to be paying attention for. And he had a nugget about how, essentially saying, don't be surprised if other coaches around the league run up these scores against the Colts. That's some stuff that you hear in high school. That's some stuff you hear at some, maybe some levels of college football. My jaw hit the floor when I read that. And it makes sense. These coaches are offended, embarrassed, and looking for blood when you question their livelihoods and the dedication it takes to reach one of those 32 head coaching jobs in this league, to just hand it to somebody who is clearly a good person, but of course does not have the resume that warrants an NFL head coach. This league has taken that personally, and it sounds like the first sign of that came on Sunday night.
Man, because that was something else, man. I don't know if I've ever seen an avalanche like that. 33 points in the fourth quarter. They had the Colts taking a knee down 40 points with like a whole minute left in the game, bro. I don't know if I've ever seen anything like that. But that was absolutely dead on, man. You're so right, and obviously that was some good stuff by Locking Ford dropping that in there. But I mean, we saw it even a few weeks ago in a close win when the Philadelphia Eagles beat the Colts. I think it was Jeff Saturday's first or second game. Sirianni was pumped up after that game, and that's exactly the reason that he pointed to. And obviously he says that, Frank Reich was a friend, and that might have played a role in it too. But that's just disrespectful. And I know a lot of coaches around the league feel that same way. And yeah, that's going to be something to watch, man. You say dark times in New Orleans, man. It might be even darker out there in Indianapolis right now. But scary. What you say scary? Like the things you see in the movies, man.
Movies, brother. Easy as that.
All right, we're going to end here with the 2-minute offense, man. Talk about a couple, 3 to be exact, matchups for this upcoming weekend, man. Let's start here, man, with the Browns at the Bengals and your boy Joe Cool, man. Deshaun Watson versus Joey B in the AFC North for the first time. Who you liking that one?
It's a big game. Deshaun Watson looked rusty after not playing football for 700 days. Live regular season football for 700 days.
Right.
I've talked to people close to the Browns, and they said that it looked like a preseason game out there in the second half, which just logistically makes sense, right? That's not a knock on Deshaun. They don't really say nothing about Kevin. It's just the way where the team's at, right?
Yep.
So expect Deshaun to look better as he keeps playing. That's obvious. Can they beat the Bengals? That's a tough task. Deshaun's home opener will be the following week in Cleveland. I think things will be rolling by then, but because of that, give me the Bengals in this one.
Agreed. The Browns already got him earlier this season. The Browns pretty much have gotten the Bengals number over the last few seasons, if I remember correctly. But give me Joey B and the crew. Give me the Bengals on Sunday. How about this one? The Bucks at the 49ers. Bucks struggling a little bit, obviously getting a big win on Monday Night Football. Brock Purdy under center for the 49ers here moving forward. Who you like in that one?
So, we talked about the Monday night game, Bucks, New Orleans, and that's a fierce front seven for New Orleans. I'm not sure how Tampa is going to pass the football against the 49ers. Tom Brady, for how good his arm still looks and all of that, it's become pretty clear he refuses to get hit. He just he don't want to take a hit.
Won't do it.
Right. So how is he going to hold on to the ball long enough to hit receivers without taking hits from Nick Bosa? I'm not sure. Start every Tampa running back, they're going to catch 11 checkdowns.
Yeah. Shout out me for having Rashad White in the starting lineup, man. But no, I completely agree, man. I think Nicky Bosa and that defense is gonna give Tom Brady some headaches on Sunday. And again, the Bucs aren't playing an NFC South team, so their chances aren't looking too good. Give me the 49ers, and we'll end here on Sunday Night Football, man, for a matchup I'm really excited for, man. The Dolphins and Tua versus the LA Chargers and Justin Herbert, man. Who you liking that one? Dolphins or Chargers?
This game might break Twitter, right? Just everyone going against Herbert and Tua and all this stuff. It's fun discourse. I'm honestly glad I don't cover either of those teams or have to be involved in a lot of that, because I think both these quarterbacks can be respected and valued for the entities that they are. No. Give me the Dolphins. You know how I feel about the Chargers.
Yeah.
Sean Payton should just go accept that job now. Book it. Book that.
Hey, we agree, man. Give me the Dolphins again. I think they're coming off a game where they were kind of punched in the mouth by the 49ers. I think they bounced back on Sunday Night Football. The Chargers defense in particular just isn't giving you much to write home about. So give me Tua, give me Tyreek and Waddle on Sunday Night Football. But that's going to do it for us, man, for another fun episode of Real Spill, if I may so say myself. It's your boy, Scott Procter, Ellis L. Williams, and we'll catch you next week on the next episode of Real Spill. Thanks for watching. Feel free to check out our other videos, and don't forget to smack that subscribe button down below while you're at it. Also, for more great and original content, head right over to bvmsports.com.